There is a comfort most people will never understand. The kind that lives in watching the same episode for the 15th time, knowing every line, every pause, every moment before it happens. You're not lazy, you're not unimaginative, you're not stuck. You're someone who found safety in predictability, who discovered that sometimes the best stories aren't new ones, they're the ones you already know by heart. This is the psychology of rewatching. And if you don't understand why your brain craves the familiar over the novel, you'll spend your life apologizing for needing what actually keeps you grounded. Let's start with the judgment you have felt. People ask what you're watching and you hesitate. Because admitting you're on your sixth run of the same series feels like confessing a failure. They don't understand. They think you're missing out. That there's a whole world of content you're ignoring. That rewatching is a waste of time when you could be discovering something new. But here's what they're missing. You're not avoiding new things because you lack curiosity. You're choosing familiar things because your nervous system is exhausted. Every new show is a gamble. New characters to learn, new plots to follow, new emotional investments that might not pay off. And some days, your brain doesn't have the bandwidth for that risk. So you return to what you know, where every arc is predictable, every ending is guaranteed, every emotion is pre-approved by past experience. This isn't weakness, this is resource management. Think about the state of your nervous system right now. You're living in a world that never stops changing, news cycles that refresh every hour, social media that demands constant engagement, a job market that feels unstable, relationships that require perpetual emotional labor. Your brain is processing more uncertainty in a single day than your ancestors processed in months. And uncertainty triggers cortisol, the stress hormone, the chemical that tells your body something might go wrong at any moment. So, what does your brain do to survive? It seeks certainty wherever it can find it, and rewatching gives you that. You know the protagonist survives, you know the couple gets together, you know the villain loses, you know exactly how you'll feel at every moment. There are no surprises, no disappointments, no narrative betrayals, just pure comfort. Now let's talk about cognitive load, because this is where it clicks. Your brain has a limited amount of processing power each day, and modern life drains it faster than you can recharge. Decision fatigue, analysis paralysis, the mental exhaustion of constantly adapting to new information. By the time you sit down to watch something, your brain isn't looking for stimulation, it's looking for rest. And new content doesn't let you rest. It demands attention, focus, active processing of plot and characters and theme. But familiar content? That's different. You can half watch and still follow along. You can zone out during the boring parts because you know nothing critical is happening. You can multitask without missing anything important. Your brain goes on autopilot, and autopilot is where healing happens. This is why you rewatch when you're sick, when you're anxious, when you're depressed, when the world feels too overwhelming to process anything new. But there's something deeper happening here, something more emotional than just cognitive rest. You're not just rewatching a show, you're rewatching a feeling. Every rewatch takes you back to the first time you watched it, who you were, where you were, what your life looked like before everything got complicated. Maybe you watched it in college when life still felt full of possibility. Maybe you binged it during a breakup when you needed proof that stories can have happy endings. Maybe it was the last show you watched with someone you lost. The show becomes the time capsule, a portal to a version of yourself that felt safer or happier or more whole. And rewatching isn't about the plot, it's about returning to that person, checking in with who you used to be, reminding yourself of what joy felt like before life taught you to guard it. Here's where it gets psychological. Your rewatching habit might reveal something about how you attach. People with anxious attachment often rewatch because letting go feels impossible. The show is safe, the characters won't abandon you, the story won't change its mind about you. People with avoidant attachment rewatch because it's intimacy without risk. You can feel deeply connected to fictional people without the vulnerability of real relationships. And people with disorganized attachment rewatch because it's one of the few things in life that makes sense. where cause and effect are clear, where actions have logical consequences, where the chaos resolves by the end of every episode. You're not just watching stories, you're practicing emotional patterns in a controlled environment. But here's what's fascinating: rewatching actually changes your brain's reward system. The first time you watch something, your brain releases dopamine during moments of surprise and novelty. That's the thrill, the high of not knowing what happens next. But rewatching activates a different pathway. It's not about surprise anymore, it's about anticipation. You know your favorite scene is coming. You know that line that always makes you laugh. You know that moment that always makes you cry. And your brain starts releasing dopamine before it happens, in the anticipation, in the certainty of knowing exactly what emotional experience awaits. This is why rewatching doesn't feel boring. It feels satisfying, like coming home, like wrapping yourself in a blanket that's been warmed just for you. Let's talk about control, because that's what this is really about. You can't control most things in your life. You can't control other people, you can't control outcomes. You can't control whether your plans work out or your relationships last or your dreams come true. But you can control your rewatch. You can skip the episode that hurt too much. You can pass at the parts that make you happy. You can rewind the scenes that feel like medicine. You can stop watching before the season that ruins everything. You become the director of your own emotional experience. And in a life that feels increasingly out of control, that power matters. Rewatching is one of the fewest places where you get to decide exactly how you feel and for how long you feel that. But society tells you this is wrong, that you're missing out, that you're stagnant, that you should always be consuming something new. The algorithm pushes novelty, your friends talk about the latest series. Culture moves so fast that rewatching feels like falling behind. And maybe you have internalized that shame. Maybe you feel guilty every time you queue up the same show instead of trying something new. But here's the truth: your brain doesn't care about staying current. It cares about staying regulated. And if rewatching regulates you, if it suits your nervous system and gives you a sense of stability in an unstable world, then it's not a waste of time. It's self-care. Here is something people don't realize about rewatching. You're not seeing the same thing twice. You're seeing it through different eyes. The eyes of who you've become since the last time you watched. That joke you didn't understand at 15 lands differently at 30. That character you hated now makes perfect sense. That relationship you thought was romantic now looks toxic. You're not rewarding the show. You're watching yourself change through the lens of something constant. And sometimes that's exactly what you need. A mirror that shows you how far you've come. Proof that even though the story stays the same, you don't have to. So, if you're someone who rewatches, here's what I need you to understand. You're not broken, you're not boring or wasting your life. You're managing your mental health in one of the most accessible ways possible. You're giving your nervous system what it needs to feel safe in a world that rarely feels safe. The people who judge you for this are the same people who don't understand that productivity isn't the only measure of worth. That sometimes the most valuable thing you can do is nothing new at all. You don't owe anyone novelty. You don't owe anyone growth at the pace they think you should grow. You don't owe anyone proof that you're making the most of every moment. Sometimes, making the most of a moment means rewatching the thing that reminds you what comfort feels like. Because here's the truth they won't tell you. Not everything needs to be new to be valuable. Sometimes, the most valuable things are the ones you return to again and again until they become part of you. So, press play for the 10th time, for the 100th time. Watch that show that feels like home. Quote the lines you know by heart. Cry at the scene that always breaks you. You're not stuck in the past, you're borrowing comfort from it. And that's not something to apologize for, that's something to honor. Because in a world that demands constant change, there's quiet rebellion in choosing to stay, in finding your anchor, in exactly knowing what you need and giving it to yourself without shame. Rewatch if that's what saves you. The world will keep spinning and you'll keep returning to stories that remind you who you are.